Hi.
Hi.
So is this our first episode?
I think it is, yeah.
Welcome to Rooted with BODHI.
I'm Emmy Mathis. I'm technically going to be the host for today. Technically interviewing Zook for our first episode.
Yay! So let's just kick it off.
Okay, cool. Cool beans.
What are you thinking?
Um, I think, let's see. I think we're going to be editing this a lot. So, okay. Yeah, let's start. So, BODHI is a healing center.
Yes.
And we're also really important for the mission of BODHI is that it's a resource. That it's a resource for the people around us, that it's a resource for a planet, and that just kind of thinking of BODHI as a physical place, but also an energetic place, a way of thinking. One of our taglines is rooted, centered, and expanding because we are trying to liken ourselves to the Bodhi tree, remembering where our roots are. And so when I was thinking about podcast themes, the concept of rooted came through. If I was going to do like my very own podcast, I always wanted to call it like playing in the dirt because I don't know. I like, I want to know what the tea is. Like I want to get dirty. I want to know
Earthing.
Yeah, earthing, and also like tell me about your trauma.
Right. Going deep.
Yeah.
You're going to hear a lot about that in our podcasting.
No one's mothers will be invited to this. Yeah, and so then that kind of led into this idea of rooted and what does it mean to be rooted? Like, where are your roots? So I think starting off with the first question of Allie, when you think about your own personal roots, where does that lead you?
Big question. I think that was part of why I created BODHI was I don't think I was rooted.
Okay.
I was really out of my body. I didn't know who I really was. And so it's to answer your question, it's take on a totally different meaning to me.
Mhm.
And I feel like I am actually now like the seeds have been planted and I'm rooting. And I'm rooting from a soul's perspective, like really going back into like following my intuition and being guided by something bigger than me, which was not how I operated my whole entire life. Right. So I'm so happy that I'm starting to root.
Yay.
That's what I can say.
I love it. I think when people speak about like male-bodied people, like or people who like kind of like feel more masculine versus feel more feminine, a lot of times they say like men tend to have their lower chakras activated a lot more easily, like their root, their sacral, and their solar plexus. And then like women or people who feel more aligned with feminine, we like our higher centers. And so it's like this process of learning, like I'm learning how to get into my body and into my root chakra, whereas other people are like actually learning how to get up into their heart, into their spirit.
Yep.
Yeah. So I always think of that like with rooted, but people always are like, you're not rooted, you're not grounded, blah, blah, blah. And then I heard this beautiful thing for like feeling rooted. It's like feeling your feelings. I feel my feelings.
I was also like, whoever tells somebody that you're not rooted, like that's another fundamental issue that we have.
Yeah, right. Like I can see
you're not rooted. Yeah.
No.
It's definitely, I think, something that we're just to kind of like broaden this a little bit more, even outside of just you and I, but as a collective, I think that's why this mission is so clear to us because we are starting to activate other parts of our human and our chakras and where the divine masculine sits and where the divine feminine sits. And, you know, in the time that we're at, it's everybody's getting stirred up. And I think you're starting to feel it because we had such like defined roles for one individual and there wasn't a balance. So anyway.
Yeah. I think maybe a follow-up question would be for this idea of like, where do you feel rooted now? Like as a parent, as a human, as a New Englander, as a whatever, like where are some of your roots now?
I now have a purpose, which is, I don't want to say sad to say. I was so conditioned that like my purpose was to be a mother. My purpose was to be a wife. My purpose was to be like a worker bee, whatever that meant. And now after I've just become more aware of things and have more clarity to my path, I mean, I am so rooted in my purpose, in my dharma, what actually fills my cup. So yes, I'm still like completely rooted as a mother, but I'm rooting with them differently than I did 4 years ago. Just in our, I have to like reparent myself. So I was rooted somewhere and it wasn't working.
Right.
And so, again, a really tough question to ask at this moment is because it's still so fresh. I'm still, that new bud is still grounding in so many different ways, but really rooted in my purpose, really rooted in my trajectory of how I want to live my life. And maybe that was a little gray before or false to my human. So those are the two like big things I can say right now is like I have clarity of where I'm going and what I want.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Didn't have any of that before.
Well, how does it feel to have that clarity?
Scary shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's operating from like a totally different space. Because I actually have control now.
Okay.
And that's really scary.
Yeah.
I mean, before it was to be working for someone or like, the system gave you your path and you just followed it. And so now that I'm like navigating something that no one is showing me what to do or how to do it, and there's no manual, it's freaky. So there's like so much autonomy. And there's the freedom, everything that we want, right? I think
I forgot to put my phone on silent.
But this is, I think, one of the funniest things is that they say like, we want our freedom. However, we're fucking scared. Are we going to swear on the podcast?
Totally. We're totally going to swear on the podcast. I
People
can't have a podcast without swearing.
Swearing. Thank you. Sailor mouth. People are fucking scared of freedom. And so, which is why we default back, like, we give our, autonomy away, our authority away, all of it. School system, right? I mean, you can go down any institution you want. So going to answer this question kind of all over the place, but I got exactly what I wanted. That's what I'm still trying to ground in. Because it's, I'm 44. And this is wild to like be feeling this way at this age and being responsible with 2 kids and, kind of the fear that people put in, like, you've got to have a roof and over your head and how you're going to feed your kids and and where's the next check coming from? And it's like, pause, like so much has happened right now. Like, I know where I need to be. I know where I need to get. I got the freedom. I just need to like process this totally new way of thinking and being. And it is scary.
I should be taking notes, but I'm not. So I think there's one question I wanted to two questions following up exactly on what you just said, but something kind of sparked when we talked about like giving away our power and our authority and these oppressive cultural systems. And it kind of just like really reminded me, I was filing for a restraining order against the father of my kids. And the domestic violence worker advocate, she used the words coercive control. And I thought that was so powerful. Because I think like a lot of our power is like taken away from us too, right?
Totally.
Through this realm of coercion, through manipulation of the fact that we are mammals and our nervous system goes into this heightened sense of fear. When our home is at threat, when our income is at threat, when our community, because of that like mammal brain.
Totally.
And so I think it's like both. It's like have my, it's kind of like fourth steppy stuff. Like I do have my role in that, but then they also have, there's also like oppressive cultural systems. Like they're not, it's not an accident, you know, like
It's not an accident. It's not an accident.
That's the first time you've heard it. I can tell you where to start. That they're really manipulating this mammal brain that we want to have faith in the people who are in charge.
Right.
And we operate from a different nervous system when we are afraid, when our nervous system reads a threat or a danger.
And they know that. Which is why it's hard to get out, because you're still in the fear.
It takes a lot to come out of. Yeah. And I forgot the last thing that you said, but it was really poignant. And I think I was like, well, I wonder what some of those roots for that expansion are now. Like what are you, you know, because I feel like you have a really strong practice. I feel like you have a really strong like service, like you're very, like you're of service to your family, you're of service to your friends, you're of service to your community. Like you went to your son's school and did breath work, right? And so it's like kind of like now for that expansion, what helps you sustain and maintain that?
Definitely my practice.
Could you say more about your practice?
Yeah, I think how I fundamentally changed was I was not a meditator. I didn't know. I operated out of fight or flight. I knew it, but I did it so well. So it was almost hard when you're in that energy, which I think I was programmed that's right. Look at how much fuel she has. Look at how much she can accomplish. Look at how much she can get done. Look, she's a spinning derby. Like, oh my goodness. And so when things started coming online, I'll just say it as that, because that's like a whole nother podcast we'll be doing. I had no choice but to like really go in and get quiet. And as you know, during this process, things were, falling off. So my life wasn't as complicated. But everything got dialed back.
Yeah.
So my practice began, it was baby steps. It was meditation at first, just taking even 5 to 10 minutes to myself. Really harnessing the mind. It became the game. I didn't realize how much control the mind has over the human. And then you just get curious. So I think that's where it happened. I just got curious because I was like, holy cow, this thing is running me, fully running me. And then to be able to know that like the thoughts that were creating the energy, which were creating the feeling, and I'm like, oh my God. And then the reality of the light bulb, like it really is all intertwined. And where does it all start from? The mind. And so bit by bit, finding the moments of such still silence in the mind was like, oh. And then it became like, that was the addiction. Like I wanted more of that.
Okay.
And so, I needed it in different ways because I was going through a lot at the time too. So I found myself getting frustrated with some of my practices, and that's where Kundalini came in.
Okay.
Part of what BODHI, I don't know if I talk about this now.
You don't go for it.
Is that the center will have our healing equipment. And then this versatile studio where we'll be doing yoga, breath work, but Kundalini specifically, because the Kundalini was just understanding our chi, our human energy, the flow. I could feel it when things were coming online. So it was like, yes, I'm in meditation, but like, I'm kind of like coming out of my body, but I'm in my body. Like I started actually feeling this, we're multidimensional beings. Nobody talks about this shit. Right. And so it's like, I can feel it. Like, what do I do? And so a dear friend who had gone through a spontaneous awakening as well had introduced me to a teacher that does Kundalini. And within the first 3 minutes of doing, so it's a breath work, a mantra, and holding a pose. Those are the 3 elements that make Kundalini the technique that it is. And I was hooked. And so going back to like what keeps me here is, one, having such respect for the human that I know it needs this time because we're not meant to operate the way I was operating. And like, had that gone any further, I don't think I'd be sitting across from you right now, across from anyone. And so once I started not having shame or guilt around that time I was giving to myself, and then knew that like I had to do this for myself. It's the only way I could show up for my children. It's the only way I could show up for myself.
Yeah.
And curiosity again.
Yeah.
I got curious even further because this Kundalini was changing me, not internally, but like my mindset. And like, right, if we create our own reality by how we think, and I was changing the way I was thinking. I was changing what was coming in and what was going out. And like, then I could tell my reality was different.
Yeah.
Like I was operating different in the world. I had more bandwidth for things. I was able to like calmly hold. What do they say? I wasn't reacting.
Yeah.
I was responding. And I was like, wait, what's that? Like, what a simple statement, except like in practice to fucking polar opposite ways of behaving.
Yeah.
And I was so reactive.
Yeah.
And like, no wonder I pissed so many people off. No wonder I got like in good ways and in bad ways, right? Like, or got what I wanted because I was so reactive and there was so much charge and like, oh my God, I'm so sad, like sick of myself. It took so much energy. How much energy that took where I could have just like sat back and responded. Right. So back to the practice, the meditation, the Kundalini, journaling. I mean, I fall off, but I get really clear thoughts that are like, I just know that like that has to go in a book, that has to go in a journal, it has to go somewhere. So it's not a day-to-day, but the Kundalini part and the meditation is 1,000,000%. And I know when I don't, things are stirring.
Yeah.
How about you? Okay. Well, I interview you next time.
Sure. Or you can interview me now if you want. It's up to you.
Well, you've been you've been aware of a lot your whole life. And that's overwhelming. And I wonder, single mom raising 2 active boys, how the fuck do you stay grounded? Do you have practice? Do you want to practice?
Yeah. I think like in my mind, I want a practice. In reality, I don't. Like, I don't know that I should say that. I don't know if it's because of like how extremely neurodivergent I am, where it's really hard for me to do the same thing at the same time every day. Like it's almost impossible. It probably is impossible because I still haven't done it.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. And I feel like there's the only models for the vast majority of models for like self-care, the vast majority of models for getting out of your rut or whatever, making like the Tony Robbins stuff. It's all like you do these things this way at this time, and you have
like such a dedication, repetition,
and willpower. And I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so then obviously that means I'm like fundamentally flawed,
Well, you're the one saying that to yourself, but it's finding a different way of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so then I'm like, okay, actually what that is the divine masculine coming back online for those people in their world. That's what works for them. And maybe a huge part of my path and my journey is to come in with this really divine feminine energy of like, that works for them. But I'll bet for a lot of lifetimes, I was like, this is what works for everyone, because of how much I've had to be shown, no, like we will not give Emmy the opportunity to have this stability.
Right. You're never going to go in this box.
No. And we'll just keep taking all of the boxes you try to put yourself in away from you. Yeah, thanks, universe. But I think every day, I take homeopathic essences. Every day I take supplements. Every day I focus on my breath. Is it at the same time? No. Is it when I'm doing the dishes? Yes. Is it every time I remember to? Yes. And so there are times where I just kind of like, I'm just focusing on my breath all day.
Yep.
Yeah. But am I sitting in meditation on a cushion? No. I don't have the life. I don't have that privilege right now, you know? And I think that's okay. For me, like, it's like there has to be a reason for that, because I'm probably meant to bring this into the universe and into this planet of like, you don't have to do it that way.
Exactly.
If that doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean it's never going to work.
Yep.
Yeah. So before I had kids, I had a practice, a pretty intense Buddhist meditation practice. I did prostrations. I've taken householder vows, bodhisattva vow, refuge vow, all of that good stuff. But now it just doesn't work. And I need to learn to be okay with that. And also recognize that that doesn't mean I'm just like going about my day completely unaware.
Right.
Like, I know this might sound extremely arrogant, but I feel like I sit in almost constant awareness. Like, I would say 60 to 80% of my day, I am
fully aware of your body.
Yeah.
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 I think just most people don't have that ability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also want to like say, like, thank you for saying that too. There doesn't have to be this one way.
Yeah.
And when I say I'm doing my Kundalini or I'm meditating, like it happens in a car. I'm not on a cushy state of the art, whatever mat, along with like all my stuff. I mean, if I have it there, great, I'm going to use it. But like, I also find that's part of like capitalism and like selling stuff. And well, you're not really in practice if you don't have X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And to kind of like go back to the Kundalini stuff when I was first learning, because it's so much mantra and there's tuning in, and I just wasn't, when I didn't understand it, I'm like, it doesn't feel I don't have any connection to it. So like, I don't really want to do it. You know what I mean? And I then had this like internal battle. Does that mean the practice doesn't even matter? Right? Like, am I not really getting the energy? And I was like, no, right? I mean, it stemmed from somewhere, right? But like, there's dogmas to everything, and people that think, but if it feels right to me and I'm getting the benefits from it and I feel it, like, who cares if I tuned in or if I didn't, right? So to your point too, like, you're probably doing more work than average human, because you're staying in your body, and most people don't want to be in their body, which we talk about all the time. I mean, that's uncomfortable as fuck.
It is uncomfortable.
So yeah, I hope what we're creating with BODHI is that there is no one way. It's truly like, take it in and then keep, what do they say? Like,
keep going.
Or no, like listen to it all, or take it or leave the rest.
Take what you like and leave.
Yeah, or what resonates, or what even seems plausible, practical, or I think more too, as we become more energetic, which we'll talk about too. I think that's where, as humanity, we are going to start feeling things from such an energetic level. And I think if you sit and say like, this resonates, this feels right, this feels good, where's something coming up, what's for you. Yeah. Right. And it was just undeniable to me, because my human had never felt so called and so happy. Like, my cup was being filled. And I don't think there's been many activities, one, that I was ever called to. And I was usually doing it because everybody else was doing it. It was mainstream. It was like the cool thing to do. Whatever the flavor of that year was. And this was like the first time that like this wasn't mainstream stuff. I mean, meditation, but like the Kundalini, and my cup was getting filled. I like started like wanting it, there was like endorphins are like kicking, like wanting it. And I was like, holy shit, like my body wants it, my mind wants it, my soul wants it. But it can be done anyway. Right. Yeah. I think that's where people like fall off of practice, when they're like, but I missed it, or I did this, like, you just come back. Right.
I was sitting in a meeting, in a recovery meeting, and this man said the most poignant thing. He was like, he's like, we ebb and we flow. And he's like, and I realized that my higher power, it's in like the coming back. And so for me, that kind of turned into this concept of like, you keep coming back. Cause like, that's what something that they say at a lot of different types of 12-step meetings is like, keep coming back. And I was like, oh yeah, like it doesn't just have to be the meeting. Like it can be keep coming back to spirit, however you define it, even if that's your conscious, right? Your conscience, right? Like keep coming back to your body, keep coming back to the breath. But just like you just keep coming back and you build those neural pathways and you build that energetic circuitry, and it's the universe is based on expansion and contraction. I really appreciate this one practitioner who actually calls it anchoring. So it's expansion and anchoring.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's nothing bad about the ebb, right? There's nothing bad about losing the connection. There's nothing good about coming back to that connection. It's just this universal flow of, like our lungs do it, trees do it, like everything expands and anchors, or expands and contracts, or expands and releases.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's been a huge, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, and
analogy in this whole
definitely
space that I've been going through. Everyone's like, no, I mean, right, jellyfish, they like expand and then they contract and move forward, right? Like this is like how you get momentum. And so it's not good, it's not bad, it's like it's how
it's just
we're made. This universe is all about it.
Yeah. And so I think to kind of tie that back to, I think what our point was was that if you have a practice, or if you're trying something new or anything, like it just focus on the coming back, right? Like I'm going to focus on coming back. And and then also to kind of look at like what needs aren't being met when I'm not able to come back, or like what unmet needs am I experiencing when I'm pulled away from that conscious moment, and like I have this in my bio, but like I talk a lot about unmet needs, because that's when we become the version of ourselves we don't want to necessarily want to be, the version of ourselves we don't like. And it's like, well, yeah, but like how many unmet needs you have right now? Look at how many unmet needs our parents had. Look at how many,
Oh, here we go with the generational lineage. Got a lot. But it's so true, right? Like people didn't know how to come back.
Right, at all. They just knew how to go forward.
Right. Which then adds just, I mean, I think again, the pinnacle, the tipping point that we're at as a society is that you just can't push anymore. I mean, people are breaking. And I mean, dying at rates that we've never seen.
Unprecedented rates. Sorry.
No.
I don't know why, but for at least a decade, I've always called our generation like the generation that broke, because we tried our parents' techniques, and our parents are convinced that like those are the techniques that you need to do, but we've tried them and society broke, our bodies broke, our spirits broke, and it also, is it 111?
We love that stuff.
Angel numbers.
I know.
But yeah,
they broke.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And that's okay, because it gives us a new space to find something that is sustainable.
So I say, I feel like this is my segue. That's what happened.
Yeah.
I fucking broke.
Yeah.
And had a spontaneous awakening. And it wasn't an awakening that I realized that like my job wasn't serving me, or that I wasn't like really happy in the way I was living my life. Like I broke all the molds. And I think I had to one, I think, there's multiple parts to this for my human itself, because I was on a crash course. Alcohol, drugging, so many pharmaceuticals, that again, anytime I was like, I don't think I need this anymore, they're like, but you should just stay on it because you're doing well, aren't you? Right? Yeah. Like that was the feedback. Well, do you feel like you need to be off of it? I'm like, well, I just think I've been on it for a really long time. And all of it. And then to also break so fully to then be in this crazy time that we're in right now of this evolution.
Yeah.
Because we're breaking literally hundreds of, not thousands of years of this mentality, this cycle. And so it's like I literally like broke multiple times. Like so it went deep, but it was to get to see where we need to be and like what my purpose is, right? So there's all blessings to it, but yeah, we're all I don't know how the normal human isn't saying like I can't do this another day.
Yeah.
Unless they're like on so much Adderall and alcohol and speed.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Or distraction.
Or so distracted that they can't even see what they're in. Because I probably, right, like 6 years ago, had you met me, you just would have been like, I'm staying clear from that chick, you know, like, woo. But I didn't know because I was so close to it. I was so into it. I was so there.
Yeah.
And, you know, now that I'm out of it and then looking back in, it's just like, everyone's got to be putting out. It's too much. And I don't think they know where to start. That's the other thing. And this goes back to the like charting a new course and like, right, we are so programmable or conditioned by our surroundings, our environment, our parents. And so now it's like, well, none of that stuff worked. And we know that. So here goes back to the like uncomfortable. People are going to get and need to be really uncomfortable because this is the path. Like we have to chart a whole new way of being.
Right. And this was something I actually started to put together when I was in LA, is that the idea of just how little capacity we have for discomfort.
Oh.
And like that's okay, because I think that there is a direct correlation between discomfort and our sense of safety. So, even if you go back to like birth, right? If the birth was challenging, if I wasn't given to my mom right away, if I, any of that stuff, like if at that time discomfort would have sent signals to my nervous system and to my memory, my embodied memory, that being uncomfortable isn't safe. And so I think those cycles and those patterns just keep getting fed as we grow, that like if I walk into a room and my parents are fighting, I'm not safe. In my nervous system, my amygdala, they're like, there's discomfort here. Right. And so I will take these actions to make them happy or to make myself disappear or both. And so I think that idea of like, which I also think goes back to BODHI, is giving people the capacity to experience that discomfort safely.
Yes. Huge. That was definitely part of the mission, right? I mean, I'm so grateful that my path went the way that it did and that it didn't end horrifically, to be honest with you, because I didn't feel safe anywhere until I met yourself and other people who held space for me and saw what I was going through. And so that was like the biggest mission, because knowing what we know, we're all going to start needing to get uncomfortable. If I can help and serve, which that's where the whole like being of service and being so drawn to this and clearly knowing it was my path, like let's make a container, let's make a space that people are not judged, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel safe. Speak your truths. Like there's nothing here that I haven't said 10 times or like enlighten me on a new thing, right? I mean, we just were so quick to judge anyone who's going off a path or speaking differently than others or separating from the herd, right? Like we have been totally conditioned to herd mentality. So yeah, that was the biggest thing for BODHI. And like I mean, just even talking about it, like I can feel it in my chest. I just want people to come to us. I just want you to know that like we want to hold space for you. We want to hear you. We want to let you feel it, because it is beautiful when you feel it. You know what I mean? Like it's uncomfortable, it hurts, but like when you have people there with you, holy, like, it's so fucking cathartic.
Sorry, I'm a swimmer.
Oh, it's so fucking cathartic. So that's the other thing. I don't want this podcast or what we're saying to like, because people are scared to change.
Yeah.
People don't want to admit what's happening right now. People don't want to see things for what they are.
Yeah.
And that's because it's really uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And so again, I'm not trying to put the fear that like, unfortunately, like you will be squeezed. There will be a point where you will have to acknowledge this, like not as fast as I did, but like in dripped, and we're going to feel it. So don't suffer.
Yeah.
Like find your tribe, find your people. If you're called to BODHI, you know, come and feel the energy, right? Like that's the other thing. Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's beautiful, and I'm really excited for that next chapter for us.
Yeah.
And for you out there.
Yeah.
What else?
I don't know. Looks like it could be a good ending spot.
Okay.
I guess we don't know how to end our podcast either.
And this is our first one. So, but there were so many things that even came up for next time. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh, let's talk about like birth stories and like epigenetics. Speaking of traumas and generational lineage things. I mean, it's all, again, why we wanted to do this podcast, the amount of information, which is so overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like taking it through a fire hose when you get curious.
Yeah.
How can we distill that down and make it comfortable, make it concise?
Yep.
Have us talk with, you know, some of the leading thought leaders in these, because it's real and we weren't educated in this and we knew nothing of it.
Yeah.
Or at least I didn't. I can only speak for myself. And I have such more empathy for myself. And I also know why I act the way I do and why I was reactive and not responding. And so anyway, we have so much on this podcast. I think that's what we'll end with, is that it is so exciting how many topics, just a beautiful information that just gives you such tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah. And I think one thing that keeps kind of coming back is, I don't know which trauma-informed practitioner, it might be Gabor Mate, but someone said that trauma is what happens when there's a lack of an empathetic witness. And I know how much I change and grow when I hear my reality mirrored back to me, when I hear what like I knew to be true. It's like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Or other people feel the same way. They may have different lived experiences, but their reaction was the same. That feels so profound. And so I think also allowing the information in our Learn section with the podcast and the blogs and the videos and whatever else is out there is this idea of like mirroring back like a clear, my abnormal psych professor in like the year 2000, he said that when we're young we don't really have a sense of self, and so it's our caregivers' jobs, like they mirror back who we are. If their mirrors are warped or broken, our vision of ourself is warped and broken. And so I think with this information and with the work that we're wanting to do, a huge part of my practice is like, let me just show you a clear mirror, right? Like, this is like, let's mirror so that you can feel yourself as a human. And like, humans have needs. We're not machines. We're not robots. We need community. Our nervous system is wired to live in community. Like we need healthy, nutrient dense food. We need access to play and rest. And so this idea of like, these are the warped mirrors, and let's clean them up, right? Let's fix them. Let's toss some of them, you know, some of them we just gotta get rid of. Right. Yeah.
And it's really hard for people, even if they know that about themselves or feel it, literally can't, because you're in it too much. That everyone around you expects something. You don't feel like you can get out of it. You can't change this way. And so again, bringing that back to the BODHI to find people that are searching for those, and I don't even want to say like-minded, but those on a path. Knowing that they need to transform. We say that a lot in our website. You know, it's the transformation of the human. And so to be mirrored what was false And then finding your way through it, right? And then, but in a space with people that are,
like deconstructing it.
Yeah, totally. Which has been my past 4 years.
Yeah. And I don't know why I feel like naming this. I know we said we were going to end, but we're also two Geminis, so that might.
That's how that works.
That like, I have really bad days, and I think that that is okay to say. You know, like I have really bad days.
I have really bad days. Like really bad days.
And we don't normally look like this when we're working together.
Like at all.
So it's okay.
And I think we'll talk about that too. And knowing that that's bringing this back to BODHI in the space of why this was my dharma. We don't let people really show how they're feeling. And that was like so much of my masking. And I think to make a joke at why my days are so hard, I think I said this to you, you're like, because you're feeling again.
Like how many years
had I masked? I mean, something would come up and I would jolt out for a run, or I would go to the bar, or I would take something, or I would scroll on social media, or part of this like whole thing was like, nope, you're gonna get really silent and you're gonna feel it. And I'd call you and be like, I feel like I'm literally like being knifed from the inside. Again, not placing fear in people. Mine was strong. Mine was really strong. I think I was so numb. I was so numb. So, you know, I was probably on the other side of the spectrum for most people. Like this may not even relate to some people who are like, no, I've always, but again, did they have parents that held space for them like that? They were actually able to work through it. Like we're all so different. But I think my upbringing was fast and it was really high energy and we had resources. So like, even if I was sad or upset or whatever, how could you not be when suddenly it was like, well, here, just take this. And you're like, shiny new toy, like, or whatever that may be. And then the supplements and all the little distractions all gathered up. And then I hit my awakening and I didn't have any of those tools to use. And then I started having really bad days. but in, I guess, the most beautiful way ever, because I know that I'm like, I'm clearing it, right? Like it's coming up. I'm starting to find who I am. And again, BODHI, I feel that all humans were going to have to go through some sort of process, maybe not to this extent or extreme, but we need to figure out who we are. And it's uncomfortable and it can be painful, but then you'll have a space with others that are going through the same thing. And it's beautiful. Because now I'm like, I love doing it because I have you and I have my people and I go and we're like, oh my gosh, like I think I never had what was, you know, this week was like working through like unconditional love. And I'm like, I think all of my relationships were conditional and like, okay, that's a big one to fucking work through. But then I like go to Claire's or all my friends who are on that same path. And it's just like, oh my gosh, get it up. And then it's like, woo, you know, but that's the experience. We're here to feel. We're here to go through this. It's not to work and do daycare and to cook and clean and then retire to only have blah, 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 and then die. We're here to feel.
And I think it's okay if we like cook and clean and go to daycare, right? Like, I think it's okay to, I saw this really beautiful video and he's like, I realized I could become enlightened in my 9-to-5 job, right? He's like, but it's my choice. And so I think that the concept of authenticity is really big, like that uniqueness of what I do, I want it to be a choice. And so if I do choose a 9-to-5 job, it's a choice. It's not based out of fear. It's not based out of worry or shame. It's no, I'm choosing this lifestyle because that's what I want, and that's okay too. But the idea of like our inner authority. No, I
wasn't trying to do like black or white, but it was just no. But how
I get it
when you first wake up, not when you first are just understand if you take a high level of like what life is, right? I'm just saying it's like there are these points that were milestones we're meant to hit and do, and then it's over, right? And I just got lost in that. And then the whole point of like, but we get this vessel, we get this body to navigate this plane, and there's so much more to it. Then I guess that's what I'm saying. The levels of like, yes, you can go to the 9 to 5, but we're also talking about the fact that you want to do it and it's filling you and it's got an energetic tie to you. Like that's the part that I feel like we've just totally lost.
Completely got.
No one is connected to. I shouldn't say no one. That sounded really. That's okay. A lot of us are not, you know. So more to come.
And we're here to support you along the way.
Yay!
Okay, well, thank you for tuning in. We will have more of these. I'm sure at some point in time in an organized fashion. It might be sporadic for a little bit, but we will be doing more podcasts and developing
bringing people on too. We have a lineup of a couple Ayurvedic practitioners who want to work with us. Some truth speakers just in the area that have quite the credentials, I will say. So it's just, again, I find this stuff all so fascinating, and everyone's journeys are so different. That's what makes this whole thing fun.
So thank you for bearing with our first podcast.
Thanks for putting this together and wanting to do it.
Yes, of course. All right, thanks.